Well, welcome everyone to this amazing panel with these three amazing scale-ups, Natalia from Flow, Jose from Kida, and Ricard from Kafler. Today, we will talk about the key strategies managing high growth and obviously the strong company culture and how to grow your team, and leveraging obviously the technology and the operations. And finally, we will talk about M&A and some tips for entrepreneurs. So thank you very much to join us. I'm Laurent Arens from B Startup 10. B Startup, in a nutshell, is the financial partner of Banco Sabadell. We provide services, banking services for startups and scale-ups. And we also invest in startups through two different vehicles in venture capital. B Startup 10 is where I am currently working. We invest in more or less 10 companies per year, 100K per company. And we have more than 94 investment right now. And we invest also with Sabadell Venture Capital in Series A and B with equity and venture debt. So Natalia, in a nutshell, can you introduce yourself and your company?
Okay, perfect. My company, I'm Natalia Villora, CEO of Flow. We provide a SaaS specializing in marketing and management for beauty clinics, aesthetic medicine, and health sector. And we provide a complete tool with everything you need as ERP or app for final clients. We go to B2B and B2C.
Okay. And then Jose and finally Ricard.
Well, first of all, thank you for inviting us to be here. It's a pleasure. I'm Jose Carol. I'm the VP of Business Development in Kida. Kida is a social impact company that was born in 2018 to transform home care service in Europe. We work in three main areas. The first one is private home care, so we deliver carers for families that has this need. Second one is public tenders, and the third one is insurance for disease prevention. I want to share also some figures. We have a GMV of roughly 70 million euros. We are 200 people on the team, and every morning we take care of 5,500 families. And that has been thanks to our investors. In March 2023, we raised 18 million round, led by Kibo Ventures. And we have on our cap table three of the most important VC impact funds of Spain, which are Creas, Bolsa Social, and Ship2B, and also the startup of Banco Sabadell.
And finally, Ricard.
My name is Ricard, and I'm one of the founders of Kafler. Kafler is a marketplace for car services. We basically go to your house or your office, pick up your car, and do any service that your car needs. And we're also selling an operating system, software tools, basically, to our partners like car makers, dealerships, repair shops, etc.
Okay, so let's begin with the first question. Could you describe the biggest challenges you faced during the early stage of your startup? We can start with you, Ricard, and come back.
I think the biggest challenges, like in making the transition from an early stage company into a scale-up, is that when you're a startup, everything is kind of legit. I think that you do everything that's possible to get the product market fit, hire some talent, and just keep the wheels turning. And as you kind of scale into becoming a scale-up or a larger corporation, the type of talent that you need to hire is different. The type of organization that you have to build is also different. So I think that the challenges that you face are completely different, right? It's moving from a world where do whatever, but just get this new client or sell this new product or release this new feature. And as you grow into a scale-up, the type of challenges are more around how do we build this department, or how do we make sure that the culture that we have still scales along the way. So I think that the type of challenges are really different, and also the type of talent that you need, right? You need more kind of generalist talent on the early stages, and as you go into the scale-up and Series B plus stage, you need more kind of senior, specific type of leadership teams and middle managers, etc.
And in your case, Jose, you are also an ex-venture capital, so you have the experience in both part, in the startup part and also in the venture capital. Which are the challenges for you?
Well, I think that the main difference, I will say that it's when you're on the VC side, you are more like on the strategic part, no? And then when you move forward and you are in the startup, you are on the clearly you are on the execution part. And I think it's that for me it's the main difference, no? When you are as a board observer or board of directors as a member on a company, you have like the strategic view of the company. You try to guide the company to to support. But if you are on the being like a manager or a VP or whatever position that you have on the startup, I think that you are the one that has to execute, and it's completely different.
And finally, in your case, Natalia?
For me, prioritization is the most important thing when everything needs your attention in the early stage. So it's very important to have a team that you really trust in, for me.
I totally agree. And transitioning from the startup to the scale-up involves significant operations challenges. And then depending the company, if you are more a B2B or a B2C, but whenever it's probably one of the most challenges for these startups. In your case, you are in different countries, so how can you explain these challenges?
For me, I thought about that a lot, is onboarding new employees. It's very important to build, to design, to perform very good in onboarding, because if you give to your employees, to your new employees, a deeply knowledge about the company, the goals, at the end the performance will be perfect, because onboarding new employees in a scale moment is very, very important.
And in Kida, Jose, how did you manage this increased complexity in the operations?
I would like to divide this in two sides. No? The first one I would say it's about technology. You have to have your technology ready for scale, no? And that's not obvious, clearly not. I would say it's quite hard, no? And the second part is that we have a company that it's like quite busy in operating, no? So for us to open a new city, it has operational issues to be addressed. No? For instance, we have to have the carriers. When we opened, for instance, Valencia, Kida wasn't known in Valencia. So first of all, you have to be known on the city. Then you have to take both. No, from one side customers, and from the other side we need also carriers. No, so the operational part of our scale was. But now I think that we have cracked quite a lot. And we don't have like a máquina de churros, but we know more or less how to do it. But the first one was quite hard.
Mm-hmm. And in your case, Ricard, in Kafler, you grow rapidly. The first year, you open a lot of cities. So how this complexity affect the day of your company?
Yeah, I think it was a challenge. In fact, we were born in 2021, where there was a lot of access of capital, a lot of money flowing into the company, and this made us scale very rapidly in a very short period of time in terms of increasing the team, the numbers of cities, etc., and seeing that complexity, it's really exponential, right? So every layer that you add, it's a new set of complexity. So if you're opening a new city and at the same time you're releasing a new business model, you multiply that, right? And if you increase that city on, like the team on that city per 2, you increase the complexity as well, right? So it's really exponential complexity as you scale. And I think that what really helped us in our case, and what we're still fine-tuning today, is this máquina de churros or playbook that we have today, which is really identifying what are the key levers for whatever challenge we have, right? So it's about releasing a new product or a new city. We have a very identified playbook of what comes first. And I also think that sometimes people tend to kind of confuse the startup with, like, the scale-up doesn't mean that the company can stop growing. The scale-up means that the company needs to grow even faster and needs to even have more sense of urgency. So I think that you also have to keep the DNA of people who are exceptional people, are adapting to changing situations so that they can face that complexity even when that complexity is 10 times what it was when you were just a smaller startup, right? So great teams and very clear playbooks for each step of the journey.
And how did you leverage this with technology in Kafler?
Yeah. So that was a big portion of us, right? Because we grew very rapidly, and our technology was always one step behind. And we've changed the model because, as Jose was mentioning, our model initially was also really heavy on operations. For those services I was mentioning before, we used to employ the drivers who did the pickup and delivery. And think that this means having hundreds of people employed by you where the kind of operational effort is massive, right? So we were always lagging the technology into the business. And now we've changed the business approach and trying to be a more software company and really understanding how technology can enable the business to grow fast, right? But we kind of took an approach of like an MVP mindset where we said like, we're going to release whatever we need to solve this problem, even though it's not the best product, even though it's not the best technology, and even though we know that 3 months or a year from now, we're going to be throwing that piece of technology away. But still, this is what we need for this kind of fire that we have in front of us.
Mm-hmm. Natalia, you have talked about the team and the talent. How did you support this growth with hiring the best talent and retaining this talent in your company? And also, how can you preserve your company culture with a high growth in your team?
That is very, very challenging because culture for me is the most important thing. You have to drive in your company by your values, and your own values as a CEO is very important in that part, because in time to times you face challenge as a team, as a company, and you need to be a guide for your team today. And for me, you need to manage that, giving today to a lot of time an example. And if you need to take a decision, you need to take a decision in your culture vision every time. And in that moment, your team grows with you with your own values.
Mm-hmm. In Kida, Jose, you are more than 200 people. Can you explain a little bit how did you make it, and how are you doing for maintaining this culture?
Yeah, I will say, like, I will divide this in 3 parts. Now, the first one, it's hiring. When we hire, I would say up to when we were like 180 or 190, Oriol, which is the CEO of the company, interview to anyone. So that's the first one. The CEO has to, I think, interview to every person that is going to join the company until they are like whatever number that you want. But that, for me, that's the first one. The second one is you don't need, or you don't have to lower the bar, no? You have a bar for someone need to pass if you want to join you. But if you have to hire 10 tech people in 1 month, the bar is the same. And if you don't find just one, you start with one. But you don't lower the bar and get 9 in that you weren't, no? And this is like from hiring, no? From the part of developing, we do, I think, like 2 or 3 things that are quite important. No? The first one is what we do like every 3 or 4 weeks, feedback session with, well, in my case, with the manager, which is the CEO, and with the persons that I have one-to-one. And then we have twice a year what we call like a performance review of 360. And it's like this: if you get low rank in this, maybe you are not out, but in 2 months, if you don't change your behavior, you're out, no? And of hiring also, I think that you have to hire slow and fire fast. So if you see a person in your team that say, I don't know if I have to fire him, no, for sure. If you doubt, you said you have to fire. And then lastly, in the part of the culture, I would say 3 things. Now, the first one is you have to have a good definition of your culture. And I think that it's what the founder should do. And then you have to hire. When you hire, you have to take the culture. Always you have to have it in mind. No? You hire because you want skills, abilities, and whatever, but also culture. If you don't have the culture part, you don't have to hire this person. And that's what we are doing in Kida.
It's really interesting, and hire slow and
fire fast.
Fire fast.
It's not mine.
And in your case, Ricard, in Kafler?
I would say it's a massive challenge, what Jose was mentioning about the bar when you scale rapidly. I think the biggest trap that you can fall into is I'm going to hire whoever comes first through the door. and that may work, right? So I think it's very important to maintain that high bar. 100% of it, we've been through that. But I also think that it's about everything that Natalia and Jose have said, but just to add one thing on top of this is there's going to be a point where you cannot hire like beyond yourself, right? You can no longer be everywhere. So I think that one of the challenges there is how do you build a structure of leaders within the organization that you've hired firsthand, that you know that they have these values and they can hire other people in your behalf, in behalf of the organization, and you know that they share the DNA, they share the values, they have a deep understanding of the vision and the mission. In our case, like there are certain key roles that are not hired maybe by me or by Inigo, my co-founder, but maybe they're hired by Anna, who is somebody who's been in the organization for 3 years, ran all the operations. So I think like this fact where you can kind of start having different key people who can hire to grow the organization, I think that's fundamentally important, because the other way around, which is what Jose was mentioning, is if you hire wrong leaders and those leaders hiring wrong individual contributors, then you mess up the whole company. So I think this is why it's so important to also create a good leadership team that will make sure that you hire correctly and then you promote correctly and then you fire correctly, which are the probably 3 steps.
Yeah, they say, no, that A people hire A people and
Yeah.
B people hire C people, no? So
Yeah,
that's why
absolutely.
it's important. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's also a matter of like tolerance. Like it's like the system of a body where there's a virus and it rejects the virus itself. I think kind of culture should be something like this, where if you work with A players, those A players only want to work with A players. So it tends to create a flywheel of really strengthening the culture.
Let's talk about a little bit about M&A. It's obviously for Kafler and Kida. M&A serve as a pathway for growth and scaling your startup. So in your experience, is a reality or is it really expensive?
Yeah.
What do you think?
I can go
Your
first if
case.
you want. We were just discussing this on the backstage, right? Which is M&A is a big challenge. Not all the time it goes out correctly. I don't have as much experience as Jose did. We just bought one company, so maybe I can come next year if we've bought more. But I think that what is essentially important is to really understand that the company that you're buying, it's really strategic for your organization. I think that you cannot buy just out of the desire for growth, but I think that, at least for venture capital, that you should buy a competitor or whatever if there's something else beyond that. If there's deals that they have with whatever, enterprises, right? Or a great team or a great technology. I think that you should go beyond the pure asset of the revenues and the profits that they have. In our experience, that was exactly the case. We bought a company that had very good relationships with the car makers, like Volkswagen and so on, which is really strategic for us. So it was a way to fast track a process that would have taken us 2 years into just an acquisition. But again, it's not an obvious path because the challenges that come within are massive, right? The integration, the fundraising for that, whatever. So you have to balance what works best. I don't know, Jose, in your experience.
Well, for us, we have buy some companies in Spain, and we buy like traditional companies, okay? So companies that are doing home care, but with traditional, with no technology and like, no, normal ones. Well, not normal, not digital, no, let's say. And we have, we are like putting focus on the M&A side because we think that programmatic M&A has some advantage, no? The first one is it's faster than going organically. Why? Because you open a city and you have carriers, you have clients, you have a brand, you have a team, you have all these kind of things that you need some months to create, no? The second one, I would say that it's more profitable because you normally buy, we buy SMEs, normal SMEs, no? And they are always EBITDA positive, no? So you buy profitable companies. And the third thing is that normally you know quite a lot about the business. So before buying the company, you know what kind of levers can you apply with the company. So you buy profitable companies, and the third thing is that you make them more profitable. No, you apply levers,
yeah.
and they increase the EBITDA. So
And to make more profitable is the challenge. It's not just buying, but also to improve this EBITDA and revenue for these companies.
And we are not on the integration part, which is you need a playbook and so on. It will come maybe in 2025.
And then obviously securing funding is often a critical aspect when you are scaling your startup. all of you you have raised money from Kibo, Seayas, and top-tier funds, but which is your experience securing this funding? If you, Natalia, in your case, you don't raise a lot of money,
No.
but
In fact, our situation is almost bootstrapping today, but in fact, I know the relationship about the funding partners, and I believe it's very important to maintain a good relationship because you need to keep it metrics or your process. But even for me, the most important is to know where you need to use these funds, where is the business performing, in that case. But it's true that I have a lot of experience in that type because we are almost bootstrapping.
Yes, and obviously when you are a scale-up, the VC is looking for metrics, profitability, or unit economic. So which, in the case of Kida or Kafler, which is your experience raising money with top-tier VCs in Spain and Europe?
You go first?
Yeah, I think in our experience, I think that as you transition from the startup to the scale-up, so startups probably in the earliest stages, the seed, pre-seed, whatever, are more about the story. And as Laura was saying, when you go to the Series A, B onwards, it's more about the story plus metrics that prove that you're the right team or the right company to execute towards that long-term vision that you have. And we face that transition, right, where they no longer want to hear about the massive vision or whatever, but they also want to see the results. But I think it's good. It's healthy for the company that you have a high standard that you have to cross. One piece of advice that I would share generally, and we were also discussing this with Natalia earlier, which is not all the companies have the need to raise a lot of money. We've raised a lot of money. We've raised more than $10 million until date, and we're probably closing another round now. And when you look at it in hindsight, you see that it's not always been the best thing to do. I think that it puts you a lot of pressure. You get a lot, like, really diluted, and you start doing things that really don't make sense. You start going too fast. And so I think that it is important to understand, is my company the right company to raise funds or not? Because maybe your company is not a company that needs venture capital money and you're falling into a trap. And there may be some venture capitalists in the audience. Don't take it too seriously. But I really think that not all companies should raise venture capital money. And I think that those companies that do want to raise venture capital money, then I think it's a great product to really grow very rapidly. But not all startups should or could raise money.
I totally agree, and I would say that from my point of view, that I have been also like investor and now working on a startup, I think that to raise money, it's not an objective or should not be an objective. I think that the objective is to set up a metrics, to go for the metrics, to have a good team, to scale, and then if you do these things right, then the consequence is that you are going to be able to get funded by a VC. But I'm thinking more on that side, no? You have to do things well, and then if that happens and you do it well, you will be able to find money. If you don't have good metrics, if you don't have a good team, if you don't have, you can go and look for money. Good luck. You're not going to find them. So I think that it's more a consequence than an objective, no, the per se.
Yeah. At the end of the day, like, the goal of any business should be the capacity to generate cash flows on the long term, not to sell stories, right? And I think that just when you create a company that proves that they can really generate cash flows at scale 5, 10, 15 years from now, that becomes an interesting company for venture capitals, but not the other way around. Not like I sell cool stories on venture capital, give me money. I think it's...
No, I believe you need to take care of the cash flow every time because it's very important.
Yes, and finally, because we have just 3 minutes, in a nutshell, if you can take to this audience a piece of advice for people who are looking to start a startup, or if you are scaling some startup, just in 30 seconds.
I say take care of the cash flow every time, every day, Sundays too.
I would say that it's a long journey. I'm not an entrepreneur, as I said before, but you have to be completely conscious that it's a long journey. You are not going to found a startup and sell it after 3 years. This is not how things work in Spain. If you see the startups that have been sold, they have been sold after 6, 7, 8. And I think that setting up a startup just to be sold, I think this is not what I will do. I will try to set a startup for last, no? But you have to be aware that it's a long journey, and you have to be like conscious that you have to be like pushing really, really hard. These two guys are entrepreneurs for 10 years in your case. In your case, you have like 3, and you are like in the kilometer 10 of a marathon. So
yeah. Long way to go.
long way to go.
Yeah. I think in my experience, I'd say, except if you're a second-time founder, super well-known, don't get too obsessed of what you're doing right now, because it's going to change 100%. I think that the single most important skill that a founder of a company can have is the grit and the determination to keep pushing no matter what. And I think that that's the essence. That if you're thinking of starting a company, just know that it will change, it will be tough, it will get also very successful, but what will really matter is that you won't give up, you'll stay focused, and you'll stay building. So if you're building, congrats, and keep on going.
Yes, and be resilient, right? So the resilience is one important word. So unfortunately, we have run out of time. So thank you very much, everyone, for this time, and enjoy this South Summit.